What's going on, guys? This is Empty Box, and this is rFactor 2, where today we're driving the newly released McLaren 650S GT3. This is official DLC from Studio 397 themselves. So rFactor 2 finally has an official high-profile GT3 car that people are actually going to hopefully want, as opposed to a friggin' GT3 Camaro that was run by like one or two random teams. That were basically random teams. Far cry from a friggin' McLaren. I mean, I'm on board the Murica bandwagon, as most of you guys know, but I mean, if you're gonna do Murica, like GT3 Camaro, no, it's GT3 Corvette. That's what you want. Come on now. All jokes aside, this car is official DLC. It's the first paid DLC for rFactor 2, officially. It'll set you back $5.90. Perhaps far more interestingly, there's a guy brake checking me. There is a GT3 pack that is available with a prospective release date of sometime in September. Which, remember, this is sim racing, so subject to change. Definitely subject to change. That will feature the McLaren as well as 4 other yet to be named GT3 cars. So be interesting to see what comes out of that package, especially seeing how it's already early August, which means that, you know, there's only 2 months, basically 2 full months, if they actually get the thing out the door in September. So we should be hearing more details about that in the next few weeks, I would assume. But as for the setup here, we're running a 20-minute race against the AI set to 104% difficulty, 70% aggression. Silverstone full circuit. Using the 650S GT3, of course, as well as the Apex GT3 mod, which is all the other GT3 cars in this race. Largely as field filler, just to make it a bit more diverse than just a spec GT or 650S race. Which you can find that mod on the Steam Workshop. In terms of how they perform with the AI, they seem to run about the same speed. Everything seems to work out about the way you'd expect it to, so definitely a nice addition if you're looking at running the 650S GT3. It's not to really talk too terribly much about the mod. The Apex GT3 mod, it's an okay mod. It's got its ups and its downs, but a lot of them are not related to the exterior 3D modeling of most of the cars. So as extra cars, you know, to race against, perfectly fine, gets the job done. Well worth having if you're planning on running GT3 cars. I do not believe this mod has been updated, though, to fully utilize DirectX 11 and some of the changes in the way certain things are handled with regards to 3D models and materials and all that, which is why you'll notice that the Mercedes are pretty reflective. Bit of glare coming off of them, but I figure that, you know, hey, it actually looks pretty good that way, because you get that nice glare and it's immersive and shiny and everything, you know, so no major problem in that sense. But I am running on the DirectX 11, which that was released to open beta about a month and a half ago for rFactor 2. And really the main goals of it, you know, better, more up-to-date graphical features, a better, more consistent graphical presentation, as well as a better, more consistent performance in terms of frame rate. Which I can't really talk about the frame rate too terribly much, because it basically, for me, is turn all the settings up and go. And that's the way rFactor 2 has been for really about 2 or 3 years. You know, there were some issues when rFactor 2 originally launched, but those have been largely rectified to the point where I don't have the frame rate counter out. Don't pay attention to it because I don't need to. But again, your mileage may vary. But in terms of the visuals, You know, it definitely does look more consistent. It's not a huge change, but I think the areas where it does actually make a more noticeable changes are the areas where you don't really notice the changes, and that is, you know, some of the instances where rFactor 2 really looked very, very poor. You know, in regards to certain situations, like, you know, running midday on certain tracks which hadn't had the proper amount of TLC put into them to prevent this from being an issue. You know, the nuclear green grass, as I've always called it, you know, like just radioactive, does not look right, does not look like grass, is incredibly off-putting and incredibly immersion breaking, you know, stuff like that. This update has really helped to change that and other scenarios like that. It's brought more life to the graphics. It doesn't look as flat while it still looks as you'd expect it. So, I mean, really in gameplay, this actually looks fantastically immersive because it looks like it should. You know, a lot of times people get carried away and want all the effects that they possibly can. Well, hate to break it to you, real life graphics suck. They're really boring, and there's not a lot of effects. Yeah, just saying. Not that I'm defending rFactor 2, but that's why a lot of times you'll see complaints about sim racing games in terms of graphics. Well, I mean, yeah, they're not perfect, but they're also not going for the more stylized type of graphics that you see in games such as Forza, you know, or, you know, more arcade style racers. For example, Gran Turismo series, as far as I'm concerned, you know, the texture quality is garbage because, you know, the limitation of a console, but the lighting is just like, holy bejeebus, I would that lighting system, like, if that was on the PC, you plop that into a racing sim, like, if rFactor 2 had that with the physics that it has, like, then they really have something. It'd be like Game Set Match. This platform is ready to rip. But that's really what it comes down to in terms of graphics, in my opinion. It really is all about the lighting and the way things react. So just a random detour there in conversation. In terms of driving this car, though, yeah, I guess we'll start with the comparison to other sims because generally that's the one that people want to know, especially when you're talking about paid DLC. They can't test drive the car beforehand. If you're familiar with the McLaren GT3 cars from any other sim, you know, Assetto Corsa, Race Room, iRacing, you know, any of those, it drives like you would expect it to. Now plop it into rFactor 2, and it still drives as you'd expect it to. You know, in corner entry, these cars are always a bit more oversteery than some of the other GT3 cars. You know, especially at high speed, if you lower the wing a bit, these cars are always the ones that are the first ones to get sketchy, it seems. Which some people like it, some people don't. Personally, the McLaren GT3 cars are basically always my choice because I like the way they drive, and plus I just generally like the way they look because I find them attractive looking, even if this car does look like a squid. But you know, it is pointy at high speed when you lower the wing. It's not as bad as in, for example, Assetto Corsa, where if you lower the wing, you know, the car gets very uncomposed at high speed into the high-speed sweepers. You know, it does maintain its composure a bit better here in rFactor 2, but you can still feel that same type of trait, you know, especially depending on how hard you are driving the car. Coming out of the corner, again, as is typical that we've seen from other sims, mild understeer, pretty easy to put the power down. We are running without traction control or ABS here today in rFactor 2. You don't really have to worry about it. The thing just basically goes. Pretty much as simple as that. You know, it handles the bumps reasonably well. It's actually a pretty surprisingly well-composed car. And of course, because it's rFactor 2 and it's a car that's been well developed in rFactor 2, it feels nice connected to the road. You can feel all the detail and the force feedback. You can feel the steering. You can feel the grip, which just makes it very engaging to drive. Like, generally I complain about how boring GT3 cars are to drive, which a lot of that does come down to, you know, ABS and traction control, because that definitely does suck the fun out of it. But this is still a fun car to drive. Like, in my opinion, you know, you drop this car into a Assetto Corsa or the, you know, race room racing experience, the iRacing 12C GT3, which the 12C is basically, or the 650S is basically an evolution of the 12C. Like, it's just not as fun to drive, whereas this, because of the physics and the force feedback, you know, you get a nice feel. But really, I have to say, you know, if they can turn out 4 more GT3 cars of this quality, package them all up, again, they can really start to move the play field for rFactor 2. So I think they have a couple of content pieces already in play that, you know, are going to work, have an appeal, have a draw from a structure standpoint in terms of online racing. It's just a question of having something to really draw people into that type of environment, where there's more than just, you know, running Clios all day. And again, it's a lot easier for them to actually showcase and sell, you know, full-blown GT3 cars that are in the game officially, as opposed to mods, you know, because, you know, legal rights. But as for setup, pretty standard fanfare for GT3. You have the rear wing, obviously. The differential, you can adjust the preload, that's it. The gearing is locked, that cannot be changed. There are 6 sets of springs, front and rear, adjustable anti-roll bars, front and rear, adjustable dampers, front and rear, and then of course, toe, camber, tire pressures, both front and rear, of course. Again, very standard GT3 fanfare, as expected, nothing surprising or shocking there. But I will go ahead and shut up here for lap 2, let you guys listen to the sounds. Or not. How about that recovery? And now we get to drive around with square tires. Yay! Square tires on this jalopy. Fun, fun, fun. Anyways, now I'll let you guys listen to the sounds once again. It's that jackass AI. somehow that was my fastest lap of the race so far. I don't know. That lap certainly felt very crappy, to be entirely honest. Missed like half the corners on the course. But as expected, you know, and sounds, hey, surprisingly, just like every other McLaren GT3 car on every other sim. Again, not surprising because that's kind of how the cars sound. So why wouldn't it sound that way? Not exactly the most exciting, most thrilling sound in the world, but could be worse. Could be Formula E, which is also coming to rFactor 2. Aren't you guys excited? Hey, that's a different topic for a different time. Hey, again, at least it's something that this game can promote itself with. So it looks like we'll probably have 2, maybe 3 laps left in this race. One thing worth pointing out with this car, you really don't need to drag it all the way to red line. Like really, as soon as those blue lights come up, it really feels like it's time to shift. Even a little bit before that. This engine does have a good meaty power band. It's not peaky at all. Where we going? Where are we going? Another thing worth pointing out, the rear mirrors, if you're gonna, why am I using third? It's 4th gear corner. The rear view mirrors definitely could use adjusting. I don't know what the heck they're pointing at, but it certainly isn't behind you by default. At least by default for me. Okay, that's easy to change. I believe it's shift and then your seat adjustment keys. Just for those of you guys who don't know about that. I gotta say, no complaints for me, other than that AI being a total douche and smashing me off the road. But again, not necessarily surprising because when it comes to the GT3 cars, the McLaren is generally my choice. Just go ahead and take the flyer here. I always get hung up on that curb. So yeah, you can see the rear view mirror, not exactly useful. I will say it's also kind of interesting that there's not a rear view LCD display. I don't know if the 650S has that or if that's like an optional equipment thing. Because I know that's basically become the standard. There's a checkered flag. So you really only have the rear view mirrors for your rear vision, or you could obviously turn on the virtual mirrors if you would like that. So McLaren 650S GT3 rFactor 2, they work together. You know, more good content for rFactor 2. Hopefully a springboard for content for rFactor 2, which will be hopefully a springboard for the sim, and finally get some momentum really flowing and rolling outside of the rFactor 2 community itself. So yeah, that's that. Car worth having if you're a fan of rFactor 2, that is for sure, because I imagine this should be pretty popular online. So let's go ahead and see if we can chuck a drift here. drifting in a GT3 car. That's always fun, right? Okay, let's slow down here. Almost! Almost! A little snappy coming back there. Professional drifter, I am not. That is for sure. So, yeah, 650S GT3 rFactor 2. Thumbs up for me. Hope you guys enjoyed. All right, bye.